Happy Monday, everyone. Let me just make sure that my audio is good because last time we had issues. And I'm glad that I did this, even though it looks awkward on camera, because you guys are not hearing my best audio right now. So give me a second. For those of you who are here already, thanks for being here. You're going to have to watch a little bit of pre-production here. And you know what we can call this? We can call this Kaizen, the early days, back before I had my own show on NBC late night or something. Because right now it's just me and I'm having tech issues and I really want to make sure that the tech is good quality because it's really annoying when I hear that the audio is not good because I want you to hear my dulcet tones really well. So just give me a second here. And to give you a little bit of a preview about what we're going to be talking about, the Democrats have fled Texas, literally. So about 50 Democrat lawmakers in Texas literally took a private jet and have fled to different parts of the country because they want to block a vote to redistrict. And redistricting, of course, is a process by which the congressional districts in a certain state or locale are changed, which affects the number of House seats on the national stage. So it has significant political ramifications. And this thing is just not working. So I don't know what to tell you guys. First, let me just check. Please post if you can hear me well. Maybe this is actually good enough and we just go with it because I can't get my good microphone to work. But if it's not good quality, then we might have to restart the stream so that we get good quality for you guys. Want to make sure it's a pleasant listening experience, you know? So yeah, go ahead and post in the chat. Not just if you can hear me, but if it sounds good. Go ahead and tell me. Go ahead and tell me. Let's check on Instagram too. You can't hear me. You can hear me. You can hear me well. Okay. You know what then? We're just going to go off to the races and maybe this thing will start working by itself soon. Okay. So as I said, we got two things to talk about. One of them is the fact that Democrats from Texas have left Texas because they're trying to block a vote on redistricting in the state. And the second thing is Trump administration recently announced that they are withholding FEMA disaster relief funds from states or cities that participate in boycotts against the state of Israel. So to give you some context on what's going on with the Democrats. So after every census, typically what happens is there's a reassignment of congressional seats based on the populations within various congressional districts, right? So for example, I live in California. If California all of a sudden has 5 million more people, then we might get, just making up this number, 3 more congressional seats, which is a big deal, right? Because although in the Senate, every state has 2 seats, in Congress, every seat is assigned based on population. And this also happens at a more micro level within state legislatures. So for example, if you're in a place like Texas and all of a sudden Austin grows in population, well, Austin typically is blue, even though it's in a red state. So if Austin grows in population, then Austin gets more seats within the House legislature, the state legislature. So this is an important process and it happens at minimum once a decade. Now the law says that when a census happens, there has to be a redistricting, right? So every 10 years or so, we do a census. There has to be a redistricting after that. However, and this is a bit of a legal technicality, you can also force a redistricting in the middle of that decade, even without there having been a census done recently. You just need to call a special session. So what happened is Texas Governor Greg Abbott called a special session and they're moving forward with a vote to redistrict. And the perception, and I think it's fair to say reality, is that Greg Abbott and Republican lawmakers and President Trump have a strong interest in getting more Republican influence through Texas, getting more seats in the House. So this redistricting effort is going to be to their benefit. And that's not unusual because, yeah, when the Democrats have power, they try to do this. When the Republicans try to have power, they try to do this too. Now, there have been several incidents in the past, actually, prior to 2025, when the Democrats have tried to use the tactic of leaving the state to prevent a vote. The most recent time, I believe, was in 2021, where they literally left the state. And the reason that this works is because you need to have a quorum. You need to have enough people who are actually lawmakers in the state to actually pass laws. And if you don't have a quorum, it effectively blocks the votes. Now, normally when a congressperson or a state lawmaker is not in attendance, it's not because they're trying to block the vote. It's because they're on sick leave or they had an emergency or something like that. But in this case, a block of Democrats all literally got on a private jet or several private jets, at least one private jet, and they left the state. And because there were so many of them, like 50 of them, a vote was not able to happen. Now, I want to give fair due to the Democrats here. So let's actually listen in their own words why they're doing this.
State Representative James Tallarico from Texas. If you're seeing this video, my Democratic colleagues and I have just left our beloved state to break quorum and stop Trump's redistricting power grab. Trump told our Republican colleagues to redraw the political maps here in Texas in the middle of the decade to get him 5 more seats and protect his majority in Congress. They're turning our districts into crazy shapes to guarantee the outcome they want in the 2026 elections. If this power grab succeeds, they will hang on to power without any accountability from the voters. But Texas Democrats are fighting back. We're leaving the state, breaking quorum, and preventing Republicans from silencing our voices and rigging the next election. We are not fighting for the Democratic Party. We are fighting for the democratic process, and the stakes could not be higher. We have to take a stand.
Okay, so you heard from the horse's mouth himself. He says it's a power grab, and I agree. It is a power grab by the Republicans in the Trump administration, and that's what politics is at that level. It's just constant power grabs. The power grab doesn't actually bother me so long as the power grab is being done legally, and from what I can see, it is being done legally. They do have it on law that they can force a vote in the middle of the decade if they call a special session, and the governor uses power to do that, and now they have to vote. And if they don't like the way that the vote went, because they think it was discriminatory, or they think that the redistricting was done in a way that is targeting racial minorities or something like that, that's been one of the concerns, then you go to the judiciary. That's the way that the legal process is supposed to work. There's 2 parties, they're constantly vying for power, they're constantly trying to grab power. When one party has more power, they try to take it, and the game is who can be more coordinated and smarter about how they take or maintain power. I don't have an issue with any of this. And in fact, the Democrats do this when they're in power. I think as recently as was it 2001? Sorry, I don't have my dates super precise today. They went through a redistricting effort that gave them more power, and the Republicans lost the vote, and they lost seats to the Democrats. And that happens in New York, for example. So there's nothing special about that. What is unusual is going through this redistricting effort in the middle of a decade, but again, that's legal too, even if it's unusual. So why are we talking about this? Well, one, I think it's just the optics of it, to be honest. I think I just wanted to show you guys what's going on. A, because it's a trending topic right now, but B, this is more of a perception thing. It's not so much of an objective thing, but I feel like the Democrats have just become this very pathetic party where everything they do, it just seems very lame to me. Like, they went to the Trump congressional speech and they held up these lame little signs saying Elon Musk steals and threat to democracy and stop the steal. And it just looked like it looked childish, and it looked like what a bunch of protesters without much to do, not what the political leaders of the land should be doing. And it doesn't feel potent, right? It doesn't feel like there's actually a potent view in the Democratic Party of what they actually want America to look like. It's just a protest agenda. Like, everything is about protests and grievances with them. And I think that's a large part why they lost the 2024 election, by the way, because they didn't actually even have an answer. They just had a lot of complaints. And this feels like a continuation of that trend. And I just wanted to point it out because, I don't know, I'm someone who, I guess you could call me a defector from the Democratic Party, because I voted Democrat until last year, where I voted for Trump, and then I registered as a Republican because I said, well, I don't like being identified as a Republican, but I don't think any useful candidates are going to come out of the Democratic primary anytime soon. So if I'm going to vote in a primary, I'd rather vote in the Republican primary. But I'm fundamentally open to voting for a Democrat again. But when I see these antics, it's just hard to take this party seriously. people have made the observation that it seems like a bunch of theater kids who got political positions and are now using their same political theater kid antics in the highest houses of the land. And I agree, that's what this looks like to me. Now, in fairness, I mean, they are within their rights to use quorum in this way. Although I believe that after the last time the Democrats did this, because it's not the first time that they tried to vacate their seats so that they wouldn't have to vote, laws were passed to prevent them from doing this. So now the state governor, Greg Abbott, is countering by not only fining them $500 a day, but actually moving for some of these people to have their seats removed, which would, of course, be not just the sweetest irony, but massively self-defeating. And as much as I think the Democratic Party is a complete joke right now, I don't want them to lose 50 seats in Texas because I think that would completely skew the state. So I would like them to just do what we have to do when we are dealing with voting for something that we don't agree with, which is you accept the vote, you make sure that the legislative process is fair, and if you don't believe it's fair, you bring it to a judge. That's what you're supposed to do. And people point out that the Republicans have done stupid things and been theatrical. Yeah, I would say so too. I know that they haven't abused quorum in this way, though. This is quite new. And by the way, the idea of doing mid-decade recensusing and redistricting, that's not new either, because the Democrats tried to do it in the 1980s. Now, they failed at doing it that time, but it's not as if this is a new tactic that no one's ever tried before, trying to redistrict in the middle of a cycle. So, yeah, I just think it's stupid. I just wanted to point it out. It's like, come on, guys. I don't know if it's a Democrat, if it's ever reached like a Democrat lawmaker or something, but it's like, guys, get it together. Like, come on, articulate a real vision. And I will say, I haven't talked too much about Zohran Mamdani on stream. Actually, that's a lie. I think I spent one show talking about him. But my general thesis is I think his policies are not going to work. I do agree with his grievance, which is that we've gone too far. Like, if I think of political and economic systems on a spectrum, at one extreme is communism. At the other extreme is anarcho-capitalism, like complete capitalism with no restraints and no governance. And obviously, most countries are somewhere on that spectrum and not toward either end. And America's more toward the right end of the spectrum. And I think that's right. I think it's appropriate for us to be a capitalistic nation. But I think it's fair to say that corporate interests have taken too much control of American society, and we need to rein them in because, yeah, corporations are getting rich, and if you own equities, you've been doing great. But increasingly, my generation and younger are not able to buy houses, and no one's getting married, and it's really bad for social cohesion. So I think Zohran is right on the problem, wrong on the remedy. But at least he articulates a vision of what he thinks he should be doing in New York, which is making New York affordable again, right? And like the fact that I can actually say that says something, because there's very few Democrats who I could articulate a single coherent policy of. Even if I don't think it's compelling what Zohran is doing, I get why it's compelling. And my concern is that, you see some of these people like Cory Booker, the senator from New Jersey, or Hakeem Jeffries, who's actually from New York. Both of these guys refuse to endorse Zohran Mamdani. Now, some people have speculated the reason why is because of the influence of AIPAC, which is I think it's fair to call it a pro-Jewish and pro-Israel, at least aligned lobby in the U.S. It's been under a lot of scrutiny for its influence on American politics, especially because of what's going on in Israel, which we'll talk about in a moment, by the way. So yeah, some people like Cory Booker and Hakeem Jeffries, whether it's for the reason of AIPAC involvement or they believe Zohran Mamdani is too radical, they have not endorsed him. And if you actually go to msnbc.com and you look for Zohran Mamdani in their news articles, they don't mention the fact that he's a socialist in the headlines a lot. And I think the reason they don't harp on the fact that he's a socialist is because even for the left, it's too far left. Like these people, Bernie Sanders, AOC, now Zohran Mamdani, for a lot of moderate Democrats, they don't want socialism. Like they're like, hey, capitalism's fine. We just think it needs to be working better. But the problem is, if you have only one person standing on clarity and vision and convictions, then they're going to outshine anyone who doesn't have those convictions. And I don't see anyone in the Democratic Party that has convictions. And I don't see them being pro anything except protest. It's like, that's all I see these people standing for these days. It's literally a weak, pathetic impotent protest agenda. So they got to get it together, guys. And yeah, I think it's stupid that I think filibustering. I'm sure there's some mechanical reason why people have a filibuster rule in Congress. I think filibustering is really stupid. And when I say stupid, I'm like, look, I'm sure there's a technical justification for it, but this is certainly not what the founding fathers conceived of. Like people doing 10-hour speeches to stop a vote from happening. Same thing with this quorum rule. Pretty sure this is not what the founding fathers conceived of as the process and the process and procedures of liberal democracy, like people flying out of the state on private jets. That's stupid. It's dumb. Guys, this is so far from the spirit of how we're supposed to resolve things in a democracy. So yeah, I do want to see people fined. I do want to see threats of losing seats. It's like, get your ass back in the seat and vote. And if you're not happy with the vote, then organize better so that you can undo the result of that in the next election, just like we do every 4 years. This is silly. And it's such a tremendous waste of intellectual capital and financial resources. Like these private jets that they flew out on are not cheap. Right? Some of these jets cost tens of thousands of dollars per hour. Now, fortunately, the Democratic lawmakers who fled Texas, they're not actually using taxpayer money. They're using donor money from the Democratic caucus for this, but it's still stupid. Like, it's really dumb. And what is the end result of this? Like, what is actually, is there plan to just leave the state for so long that the vote can't happen? Because, by the way, while the vote can't happen on redistricting, vote can't happen on anything else that Texas citizens need adjudicated or legislated. So what's the end goal here? That you just stamp your feet and pout and fold your hands and stay at a hotel like a Holiday Inn in Illinois until Republicans say, oh, you know what? Well, they're really upset, so let's not redistrict anymore. What's the end game here? What's the strategy? It's the same thing with the signs. Like, I don't have any issue with the Democrats opposing Trump. I think that's exactly what you would expect to happen. Like, rarely do we have more than like 52% of the country in favor of right or left. So yeah, I expect the remaining 48% to oppose because there's just a fundamental ideological gap between the two sides at some level. So I expect it. I don't have an issue with that. But you're not even opposing well. Seriously, it looks dumb. It looks really immature. So I don't see strategic vision. I just see a lot of emotionality and emotional venting. And that's why I wanted to bring your attention to this. And my hope is that the Democrats actually rally back with a robust vision of the future, because I don't know about you guys, but growing up, I actually felt like every election, even if I was, I was more default Democrat and I was more aligned to the left, rarely did I feel like a Republican had completely lost their mind or had absolutely no valid points here. But yeah, 6 months into Trump's presidency, or I guess more like 7 months at this point, I haven't actually seen a compelling alternative Democratic vision for the future. And if they continue with this, not only are they're gonna lose in the midterms, they're gonna lose in 2028 again. And I actually would like to see that, because I think that making America great again is going to take longer than 4 years. So I'm totally happy with like JD Vance, who I think is great, taking the helm and Trump passing the baton to him in 2028. But I would like to see two functional parties in the United States, not just one. Okay, let's talk about the next thing, which is Trump administration withholding FEMA disaster relief money from states and cities that are participating in boycotts of Israel. And this was just announced a few hours ago. And there's reports going on from Reuters saying this, but some people don't trust Reuters, and some people just don't trust corporate media at all. So what I have done is I went directly to the Department of Homeland Security website, and I pulled the exact text from their new policy. So there's zero ambiguity about what's going on, because some people, when I posted about this on X, were like, surely that's not real. Well, it's real. So it's like a 12-page document. We're obviously not going to read all of it, but the operative part of it is this. They're classifying boycotts of companies doing business in Israel as discriminatory. And the DHS policy says discriminatory prohibited boycott means refusing to deal, cutting commercial relationships, or otherwise limiting commercial relations specifically with Israeli companies or with companies doing business in or with Israel, or authorized by, licensed by, or organized under the laws of Israel to do business. I will just leave that on screen for a little bit so you can digest that. So again, this is directly from the site. If you're looking for the link on X, I posted it directly on my X account. On my first tweet about this policy, it's in the replies if you want to just go verify for yourself. And if you go to that link, you can just Control F Israel, and it shows up 3 times. And these are all the areas where it shows up. Okay, so before I get into this and giving you my opinion on it, I want to steel man the side that I disagree with here, because I'm not going to bury the lead. I really disagree with Trump's administration doing this. But let me steel man the case for doing this. There's 2 arguments that are strong. One argument is that the interests of Israel are directly aligned, or at least strongly aligned, with the interests of America. So supporting Israel is in the interest of America, and cities and states who are boycotting Israel by boycotting companies doing business with Israel are interfering with American national foreign policy interests. Which, by the way, is essentially the justification that the Trump administration used for deporting pro-Palestine advocates. There's a part of immigration code that says that if someone's actions, like someone who's here on a green card, for example, or a visa, student visa, if their actions have severe adverse consequences for American foreign policy interests, they can be deported. So that's the section of immigration code that the Department of Homeland Security, which is, well, I don't know if that falls under Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, but that's what Marco Rubio was citing when he tried to deport Mahmoud Khalil or Ramisa Ozturk, both of which, by the way, got overturned. So the argument would go something like, hey, Israel partially or fully represents America's interest in the region, and states and cities are not allowed to undermine American foreign policy interests, right? So that's one argument. And I would actually say that's the strongest argument. There's a second steelman argument, and that argument would be, well, some people in the anti-Israel movement are actually anti-Semites, and by boycotting companies that are Israeli owned or do business in Israel, they're actually discriminating against Jewish people. So that's the second argument. And I think that's the weaker of the 2 arguments. Here's why. It's pretty simple. It's because there's a category error here. All people who are anti-Semites oppose Israel, but not all people who oppose Israel are anti-Semites. It's that simple. Now, is there a significant group of people in the anti-Israel movement who are anti-Semites? Yes. If someone is taking an action that opposes the actions of the Israeli government, does that disproportionately affect Jewish business owners? Because Jewish business owners disproportionately do business in Israel? Yes, also true. But the fact that something has a disproportionate impact on a certain group does not mean that the action itself is discriminatory. It just means that it has a disparate impact. And unfortunately, that's always the case when you're passing laws, because everyone has different socioeconomic status. Everyone has different relationships. Every law affects people differently. So the fact that something disproportionately impacts a group does not make it inherently discriminatory. And unfortunately, or I guess this is just by design, Israel is one of the few ethno-states in the world, right? Israel is a Jewish state. So if someone has beef with the actions of the Israeli government and is doing something to oppose the Israeli government, it by necessity is going to impact Jewish people. And that's regrettable, because just like some portion of the pro-Israel or anti-Israel camp, rather, just like some portion of the anti-Israel camp is anti-Semitic, a large part of the camp is not anti-Semitic. In fact, a lot of the fumbling my words here, a lot of the anti-Israel, or rather anti-Israel government action camp is actually Jewish people, right? support for the Israeli government's actions in Gaza is thin even among Israelis, because Israel is a democracy. It's not an autocracy. People have different views. Some people, in what I understand to be the right wing in Israeli politics, are very much supportive of what's happening in Gaza. Some people, in what I understand to be the left wing of Israeli politics, are very opposed to what's happening in Gaza. And that latter camp, as I understand it, is very vocal, increasingly so. So are we going to say that that camp is anti-Semitic? That they hate themselves? No. What's happening in Gaza is complex. You can say, hey, I stand with Israel and I support the Israeli government taking some action in Gaza, but I believe this has gone too far. But unfortunately, what I think has happened here, and this is part of a trend, right? It's not just about this law or this part of the DHS policy that the Trump administration passed. It's part of a trend of lumping in dissent against the Israeli government with anti-Semitism, which is not only a category error, because again, opposing the Israeli government does not mean that you oppose Jews. And it's actually incoherent to say that, because there are many Jews who oppose the Israeli government, but the Jews don't oppose themselves. We are now passing laws that make it illegal to boycott or oppose the actions of a foreign government. That's not okay. That's not okay in principle. I don't care if someone's protesting China or Russia and their treatment of and China's treatment of the Uyghur Muslims, or what Russia is doing in Ukraine. We shouldn't be passing laws that make it illegal to boycott. But actually, if you want to say this, because that's my opinion, it's a gray area, so we'll see what the courts say. I think there's something particularly problematic about saying we're going to withhold disaster relief money from Americans because of them boycotting Israeli companies or businesses that are doing business in Israel. So what we're saying is we are willing to jeopardize American lives, because that's literally what it's doing. If we're withholding money that would be used in a disaster, that means absent that money, if a disaster happens, the people, Americans in America, would have greater risk of being harmed than if they had that money. Right? Remember these floods in Texas that just happened? Remember that river that overflowed and a bunch of kids died at a camp? Now, I'm really not trying to pull at your emotional heartstrings or weaponize a disaster, but some people have said, well, if they had better alarm systems, or if the National Weather Service, or NOAA actually, in that area had been better funded, maybe that some lives could have been saved. I don't know if that's true. It's possible. And now we're saying, well, we're going to withhold money from situations like that because of businesses in a state choosing to boycott Israeli companies. That's not a good trade at all. Because even if you want to argue that America's interests are aligned with Israel's interests, guess who America's interests are most aligned with, 100% aligned with? It's not Israel, because Israel is a foreign actor. It's American citizens. The interests of American citizens are 100% aligned with the interests of the American government, at least in theory, right? So why of all the things to withhold, would we withhold FEMA disaster relief money? No, this is not. If the Trump administration wants to say, hey, get in line, this is our foreign policy, and you don't have to like it, but you got to get in line with it, okay, but don't use FEMA money. Don't hold FEMA money ransom here. That's not the right thing to hold ransom. Now, to the second point about the second Steelman argument, which would be, okay, well, America's interests are aligned with the Israeli government's interest. Okay, so if that's true, make that case to people, right? I feel like since day one, pretty much when Trump has gotten in office, everything I see is, instead of addressing the American people directly, and he could do this, right? Trump could literally just get on camera like I'm doing right now and read off a teleprompter. Hey, here are all the reasons why it's important for America to back Israel. And you know what? I'll even make the argument right now, just so you know what the argument would be. The argument would be something like Israel is the most ideologically aligned and the only liberal democracy that meets American standards of values. And they're also opposed to the Islamic Republic, which is backed by Iran and operates through Hamas and Hezbollah. So as a result, Israel is a direct bulwark against the enemies of America in the Middle East, and it's important that we support them. That would be the argument. And the argument would be, hey, if Israel capitulates in the Middle East, that complicates everything because now the Islamic Republic rises, Iran could nuclearize, and that would cause a chain reaction, and now Saudi Arabia would have to nuclearize because they said if Iran gets a nuke, then Saudi Arabia has to get a nuke, and it undermines all peacekeeping in the region because not even the moderate Muslim nations get along with Iran and the more extremist factions of the Islamic Republic. Okay, that's an argument. You can also argue that, hey, the $3.8 billion that America gives Israel through a memorandum of understanding every year, well, that allows Israel to buy American arms. It includes intelligence sharing between Israel and the American government. And, you know, to make that argument even more robust, I don't think they would ever do this, but the Trump administration can acknowledge, yeah, there are times when Israeli interests don't align with America, and it may even be the case that Mossad and Israeli intelligence do spy on America sometimes, and that just kind of is what comes in the game of geopolitics. No one's 100% your friend, no one's 100% your enemy, but some people are more your friends than your enemy, and you got to back your friends. Make that argument. Don't call people who are opposing the Israeli government anti-Semites. Don't deport pro-Palestine activists for just writing an op-ed in the Tufts University newspaper and say that this person is anti-Semitic or undermining the interests of America. Stop using force, use persuasion. Trump is incredibly persuasive. I don't know why we haven't just had a State of the Nation address where he sits there and is like, hey, I know there's a lot of controversy around Israel. This is why we're supporting Israel. You don't have to like it, but I want to make sure you understand it so you stop speculating. Because you know what happens in the absence of a clear, coherent, and cogent explanation of America's relationship with Israel? Genuine anti-Semites get listened to. Genuinely hateful people get listened to. You guys remember the last stream where I showed you this viral clip of a bunch of, they look like college-age kids or maybe people in their early to mid-20s speculating that essentially the Holocaust was justified. That's essentially what these people were saying. How do voices like that go viral? Well, because you lumped everyone in with those voices. You said that anyone who's complaining about what's going on in Gaza is a Hamas sympathizer or actually a secret anti-Semite. And as a result, you lump in, you make bedfellows of the actual anti-Semites and the people who are just anti some of the actions of the Israeli government. So ironically, in an effort to combat anti-Semitism, you are just fanning the flames of anti-Semitism. And moreover, there are cases where people boycotting the Israeli government by boycotting Israeli companies or companies doing business in Israel is a direct reflection of the will of the people. Last year in Portland, they voted for this. It was a unanimous vote. Portland's very far left. I think far left is crazy. But it's still the will of the people. So if the will of the people is that, hey, yeah, we don't want any, we want to strongly oppose American taxpayer money going to Israel, and we're going to boycott Israeli companies not because they're Jewish, but because they are doing business in Israel, and Israel gets tax revenue off that. Okay, I think they should be free to do that. But if you don't think that they should be free to do that, say it with your chest and address the American people directly. Because I'm personally tired of this anti-Semitism word being watered down and weaponized. Because you know what it gets in the way of? Seeing and dealing with actual anti-Semites. It's the same thing with this systemic racism stuff that we are just waking up from the nightmare of. If you call everything systemic racism, you water down the word until people don't take you seriously and you're the boy who cried wolf. And in fact, people become desensitized to actual systemic racism, or not even systemic racism, actual racism. And I think the Biden administration, they actually hurt the perception of Black people in America because they overcorrected for systemic racism by making these extreme DEI policies that just reduce people down to their gender and race and will put people in positions just because they're Black. I mean, he literally said, for vice president, I'm going to find a Black woman. What? How is that even in the top 20 of criteria for picking the second most powerful person in the executive branch? That they're Black and they're a woman? How about they're qualified and they're smart and they're competent, and if you die, they can take over from you? Shouldn't that be the reason why you pick a vice president, not because they're a Black woman? It's stupid. So when we make policies, identitarian policy making, it always actually comes back to hurt the identity, the identity group that you're trying to protect when you go too far. And what's happening now? Well, do we think anti-Semitism is higher or lower since Trump has entered office? If we look at an objective scorecard of, hey, if the Trump administration is trying to quell anti-Semitism, have they been doing a good job? I don't have the data, folks, but I would guess that it's actually higher now. Because the more that you try to quiet people, the louder they get. And if you stop people from speaking, then they start screaming. If you stop people from screaming, then they start fighting. We got to have a more nuanced approach to this stuff because anti-Semitism is an actual issue. It is. And I can understand why many Jewish people feel afraid of what's happening. We see insane stuff happening. Like just a few months ago, those people getting killed in front of the Israeli embassy. Insane stuff. Genuine insane. I mean, textbook insanity. Okay, we got citizens killing other citizens over something that's happening thousands of miles away. That's insane. So we do need to quell anti-Semitism. And to a degree, you need force, right? If someone is acting forceful, you need to put them down with force. But a lot of this is not forceful. Okay, a lot of this is just, some people are, yes, they're bleeding heart liberals. Some people are not bleeding heart liberals. They're just people who are concerned that we have this unconditional support for a foreign nation that has a tiny impact on our GDP and domestic issues, and they don't get why we support them. So as the president, just make the case. I genuinely don't understand why that's not being done. Instead, it's always this is one of the, again, Achilles heels of the Trump administration. It's like they always bring the sword immediately. It's like immediate, like we have to go to the mat over everything. It's like we don't need to go to the mat over everything. Sometimes people are actually, newsflash, open to rational discourse. But when you immediately meet people by saying, "Oh, well, it's all anti-Semitism," and then it's the same identitarian games of the left. It's like, "Oh, okay, well, if it's not racism, it's unconscious racism, or you're secretly an anti-Black. That's what's really going on. It's an unconscious bias." It's the same thing I see happening with respect to how people are treating opposition to Israel. It's like, oh, well, the foundations of the movement are anti-Semitic. It's all anti-Semitic tropes. No, you don't get to do that. You don't get to assume bad faith in the entire audience. It's composition fallacy because you're casting a wide net over the whole group. You're saying all the group is the same. It's not fair. It's a logical fallacy. It's not fair. Just like it's not fair when people say stuff like, oh, all Jews want to control America and all Jews are pro-censorship. That's not fair. You're putting all Jews in the same bucket. Don't do that. So we need to have a nuanced view. We need to be precise about what segments of the population are we talking about, what specifically are they doing, and what should we do to correct the problem. And we certainly should not be enshrining protections of foreign governments in any part of our legal code. And if we are going to do it, there better be a damn good existential reason that is justified as America first. Because right now, a lot of Americans don't see it. So, those are my thoughts. Now let's see your thoughts. Let's get into the comments here. Every time I get on this stream, I'm like, damn, what am I going to talk about today? And am I going to run out of things to talk about? And it's going to be like a 20-minute stream. And then we just keep on going. And it's 43 minutes in, and I haven't even looked at the chat. All right, let's read some comments from Instagram. For some reason, Instagram is like way smaller audience but you guys are way more engaged. So shout out to y'all. How do we really feel about tantrums? Naja 75 says, I think they're dumb. It's like as a leader, as a leader, your job is twofold. Part of it is about policy, but also it's about people, right? Because as your leader, it's like you're setting the example for people, right? And people respond to the tone, they respond to the comportment of leaders. And yeah, that's why I want to identify these tantrums, because I'm like, yeah, I mean, look, I get it. Like, you're against the Republican redistricting, but can you do it like more like adults? Like, this just looks lame. You're flying on private jets to Illinois. Like, this stuff doesn't work. Just like putting up those stupid little signs at Trump's State of the Union or congressional address, it didn't accomplish anything. And in fact, I think the Democrats are just losing more support. So it's funny, right? Because I think the anti-Trump crowd is getting stronger, but the anti-Trump crowd is like, yeah, but I'm not a Democrat, though. I'm not one of those people. So like, they actually have a golden opportunity to harvest a lot of the anti-Trump sentiment if they want to, and by forming a winning strategy. But yeah, they're just acting like losers. It's a losing strategy. Pre-late night Kaizen. Yes, the pre-late show, because I'm not doing some, these like Stephen Colbert shows, RIP, and Jimmy Kimmel and stuff. These guys are broadcasting at like 11 p.m. Nah, I'm in bed at 10 p.m. folks. I go to bed at 10 and I wake up at 6. I don't want to do the late night show, so we're gonna do it on my time schedule. Sorry. Maybe if they pay me enough, though, I'll switch up my schedule. Kaizen on network TV. That'll be interesting. I don't even know if network TV is going to be around in 5 years, All right, cool. See more comments here. Lawrence Jackson Rosen says, I changed parties for exactly the same reason as you. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a registered Republican now because, again, if you just register as an independent, it's like, you don't actually have as much power because there's no independent primary. So I was like, I want to be registered for a party. I don't feel like a Republican. I feel most aligned with the Republican Party relative to the Democrat Party. So I'm going to register as a Republican so I can influence the primary. So that's why I registered as a Republican. I'm sure someone will use that against me, but whatever. That's a rationale. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people. I imagine many. Actually, just say yes if you're someone who's like more like politically homeless. Like, I know there's a portion of my audience that they used to be on the left and then they left the left because they were like, yeah, these people have lost their minds. So I'm curious to see how many of you are out there. So if that's one of you, please let me know. People are saying the Democrats are narcissistic brats who want attention. That's what Chloe Dallas Girl says. Yeah, it is like, it's a self-absorption. It's like the whole posture seems to be indignation rather than efficacy. That's my thing. And that's what, it's like, that's what I know this word narcissistic has been overused so much, it barely even means anything anymore. Like, everyone's ex-boyfriend is narcissistic and everyone's a narcissist these days. But yeah, narcissism, I think, is excessive self-regard without regard for others or a purpose beyond yourself. And I think that's what the Democrats are exhibiting. It's just a lot of narcissism. It's like, sit down and figure out what you're actually trying to accomplish. Besides, I don't know. I guess that some of it looks good on social media, and it rallies the base, but it's not very effective. Yeah, MSOK says the divisions within the Jewish community across the diaspora is one of the biggest knots of all. Yeah, it's complicated because I think a lot of people don't realize Israel's a democracy. So just like we have far left, far right, moderate left, moderate right, independent, they got that too. And what's happening in Gaza is very controversial there. So yeah, I think when we use these gigantic group labels and we say stuff like, oh, well, the same people who oppose the Israeli government's actions in Gaza are anti-Semites. It's literally not true, and it's a category error that gets in the way of proper discussion, and it actually just alienates people. Because imagine you're a Jewish person, right? Or actually, no, imagine you're someone who is uh, who is sympathetic to the Palestinian situation and also like loves Jews and maybe even knows Jewish people, but just really disagrees with what the Israeli government is doing. But you keep on getting told that you're an anti-Semite. Well, what's going to happen? Some portion of those people are going to be like, you know what? Like maybe there's something to this idea that Jewish people are censoring us and oppressing us. That's what actually happens. You start creating sympathy for the extreme when you start casting moderates as the extreme. So we got to stop doing that. We got to be precise when we're talking. I think in general, I really try to stay away from group labels because group labels, I mean, sometimes they're just straight up really arbitrary. Like a lot of the racial group labels, they're pretty arbitrary. There's some biological correlates to race, but in large part, it's like, I don't know, when is someone exactly a different race? Like my parents are from sub-Saharan Africa, West Africa. Are they the same race as East Africans? Okay, well, what about Egyptians? Are they the same race or it's a different race, but they look different? It's like, a lot of this is not genetically precise anyway. I get how it can be useful because whether we like it or not, people think in terms of race. So you kind of need to analyze at times in terms of race, but you don't want to be too attached to it. But in any case, I think it's important, like even when we're using words, not to be too attached to them. And group identity labels they're inherently divisive. And we overuse them and over rely on them, and they create tribes when they really don't need to be any. Someone said Jews are being attacked and discriminated against. What would you do to stop this? I think I said what I would do. But yeah, if I were president, I would be like, hey guys, assuming that as the head of state that I believe that Israel's interests are aligned with America, I would be like, hey, I know that you disagree with some of the stuff that Israeli government is doing. In fact, I disagree with some of the stuff that they're doing. And yet they're still more of our friend than the other guys in the Middle East. And it's important that we back them because they are our only bulwark against the Islamic Republic. And the Islamic Republic funds, Hamas and Hezbollah and is aligned with extremist groups like Al Qaeda. Remember those guys? They bombed us on 9/11. And Israel is not like that because they believe in liberal democratic values like we do. So we support them for that reason. And that doesn't mean we're going to unconditionally support them because we're not going to unconditionally support anyone who's not America because we're America first. And we want to support governments because their interests are aligned with us. And what I'm seeing, I would say this if I were president, is I'm seeing a lot of hostility toward Jewish people, and these people are your neighbors. And keep in mind that many people in America who are Jewish identify as American first, and they don't even support what's going on in Israel. So first of all, you're putting them all in the same bucket. And secondly, a lot of these people have no responsibility for what's happening in Gaza and what the Israeli government's doing. So please do not be hostile toward them. These are your neighbors. And even to the extent that some of these people are supportive of what the Israeli government is doing in Gaza, the way to deal with that is to engage in conversations and change minds through persuasion, not hostility. So I would say something like that. Like just talk to people like they're rational. Some people are not rational, and you're not going to reach them all, but it's better to speak to the rational population rather than calling them the same names that you call the irrational population. So that's what I would do. Just help people understand. Like a lot of people don't understand, and like, yeah, I didn't see the Biden administration. Just to be clear, this is not even like a Trump situation. This is like both parties I see doing this. I didn't see the Biden administration explain why we have this strong support for Israel. And it's not that I'm saying we shouldn't have strong support for Israel, but make it clear why. But rather than making it clear why, we just engaging these political games and everything needs to be a fight. It really doesn't. And I may call me naive. I think there's a significant portion of the country who's not strong left or right and is open to actually engaging with issues on their own merits. And like if you actually spoke to them like an adult instead of a child, they would be open. And when you recruit those people, then they start opposing the fringe and they're like, yeah, these actually anti-Semites, these people are crazy. And I don't want to be supportive of them. And I don't want to be anywhere near them. And that gives those anti-Semites less power. But when you banish ideas in the town square, they move to the back alley. And when you banish people from the town square, they move to the back alley. So we got to stop doing that. Agreed, MSOK. Yeah, stop weaponizing the term anti-Semitism. It's just like weaponizing the term racism. Got to stop doing that. Yes, we already covered Texas Mike Parrish, but if you want to go back in the stream, you can see what I said. If you have any new questions about it, I'm happy to answer them, though. Okay. Some, okay, I don't know this. I don't know if it's actually true, but apparently Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton orders arrest of rogue Democrat lawmakers and says they should be found, arrested, and brought back to the Capitol. Sorry, this is just ridiculous. This is such a clown show. Like a bunch of Democrats got on a private jet to go to Illinois, and then the Attorney General arrest the rogues to be. It's like we've gone so far from the like badass punk rock values of the Boston Tea Party, and yeah, we're a sovereign nation. We're not going to pay some foreign government to control us as we're our own sovereign independent nation. We've gone so far from that, and this is like the most lame, watered down form of protest. So I don't know if that's actually true that they're going to arrest them. I mean, if they broke the law, they should. Like, again, get your ass back in the seat and vote. Like, do your job. This is stupid. You're because even if these people, these Democratic lawmakers, they're not leaving to Illinois on the public's dime because again, they got donor money to get on these private jets and stuff. They are getting paid by American taxpayers. So they're wasting time when they actually need to be passing bills and protesting bills that are illegal using the legal system. That's what they should be doing. Someone says Israel is a mere 0.3% of the entire Muslim-dominated MENA region. Why do Western news outlets pay no attention to what's happening in the remaining 99.7%? Well, I think part of it is because we're not funding the remaining 99.7%, right? Like if you're going to give $3.8 billion to a particular nation, of course there's going to be scrutiny on what's going on in that nation because people here feel partly responsible for what's going on in that nation's backyard because our money is going there, right? So if our money wasn't going to what's happening in Israel or in Gaza, then I'm sure a lot of Americans would be like, that's sad, but frankly, it's not my business. But because our money is going there, people care, right? Like if our money was going to Qatar, now in fairness, maybe some of our money is going to Qatar. I know some people have said Qatar and America have tight relations. So I don't know if we're funding Qatar. I don't think we're funding them with like billions of dollars unconditionally. But yeah, if that happened and then we found out that the Qataris were using slave labor to build World Cup stadiums, which as I understand it, they did, then of course there would be more American scrutiny on what's going on in Qatar. So yeah, it's because we're involved. And part of it is because I've been thinking a lot about this Israel-Palestine thing, and I really want to go to the region at some point. But I've actually been offered by some organizations to like fund my trip there, but I've refused just because I want to go there, not like taking money or accommodations from anyone. Like I don't want anyone to think I'm bought. I don't want to like develop my own opinion, develop my own itinerary, all that. So I am considering going there, but we'll see when that happens and how. But yeah, I think part of what's going on is Israel-Palestine is this interesting confluence of religious conflict, right? It's like Judaism, which is more aligned with Christianity, and Islam against Islam. I think part of it is the subtext of it. I think part of it is the perception of white people versus brown people, Israel versus like brown people and brown Arabs. I think part of it is about power dynamics, like strong, militarized, advanced nation versus third world country. I think part of it is about colonialism and the aftermath of colonialism, right? Because Gaza and the area that people refer to as Palestine used to be controlled by the British, and the British kind of just were like, all right, well, not our problem anymore after World War II. So yeah, I think it's a confluence of factors that are creating a tension on this crisis because yeah, there are other crises around the world, right? Ukraine, Russia has been way bloodier than Israel, Palestine, Gaza has been. There's there's ethnic cleansing and genocides all the time in Africa that don't get nearly as much attention. But yeah, I think part of it is those confluences of social and political factors that I mentioned, and part of it is because yeah, America funds Israel. Someone said Africans as a race are not the same as Black Americans as a race. Completely different mindsets. I just hate the endless subdivisions. It's stupid. People try to do it to me. If I say something that other Black people don't like, they'll be like, well, you're a tether, which is a term that I only learned when I started using X. I'm like, damn, you guys are really spending time making up new terms to subdivide someone and say, oh, well, you're not Black enough to talk about this, or you're Uncle Tom or Coon or whatever people say. It's like, okay, all right. So it's like, I see this happen in Africa too. It's like my parents in Ghana, there's different tribes, right? So there's like Ewe, that's a tribe, or Kwiapim, that's a tribe, right? It's like, okay, when everyone looks the same, you say, well, some of you are Africans and some of you are Black Americans. It's like, okay, then it's like among just the Africans, well, some of you are Eastern Africans and some of you are Western Africans, and you're not the same. And then you get down another degree of subdivision. And it's like, oh, well, some of you are Nigerians and some of you are Ghanaians, so you're not the same. And you get down to Ghana, it's like some of you are Ewe and some of you are Kwiapim, and it's not the same. And you know what happens at every level of division? We find reasons to dehumanize the person who's on the other side of that division and justify all manner of hatred and attack. And it's really stupid way of prosecuting political discourse, because instead of focusing on the merits of what the person is actually saying, we focus on the person and whether they're appropriately credentialed to say the things that they're saying. And of course, we're not consistent about this standard, because if you're Robin DiAngelo, who's a white lady who wrote the book White Guilt and says a lot of things that a lot of people in the, I'm trying to say this descriptively and not judgmentally, but a lot of people in the woke movement, if she's a white lady, but she's saying what people like, so she's right. It's like, we need to focus on the points that the person is making, not the person themselves. It'd be one thing if I was telling people, well, do what I do, but I'm not telling people do what I do. I'm trying to give impersonal opinions about how I think humanity ought to operate in order for us to all thrive. I'm trying to reason behind what's called the veil of ignorance. Veil of ignorance is a concept introduced by John Rawls, who is an ethical philosopher, who basically said, hey, when you're making philosophical points, and philosophy is essentially about, how, it's thinking about how the world is or how the world ought to be. You need to reason behind a veil of ignorance, which means, imagine if you didn't know what your race was or your gender was or your ancestry or your occupation. Imagine you were just a floating soul looking at the world, trying to understand how the world ought to be. What would your argument be? That's how we need to be making arguments, instead of these stupid subdivisions that people always engage in. And honestly, the moment I see people do this stuff, I'm like, okay, you're like, I'm just not going to take your opinion seriously, because you're making your opinion about me, not what I'm actually saying. I'm always happy to engage on the merits. I'm sure I say wrong things sometimes, just like every human being. I'm in a growth process. I can't even agree with things I said a week ago sometimes, let alone years ago. So there's always things where I'm in a process of discovery like everyone else. I'm on a journey toward truth, and I'm never going to fully arrive there. And we're all doing that. And we can all do that more effectively if we stop disqualifying people based on their identity. This identitarianism is so gross to me. It's such a waste of time, and it gets in the way of solution making. But yeah, it's like it happens in America too. It's like you see it. I follow hip hop. I love hip hop. So it's like, okay, well, you're Black American. All right, well, are you from the East Coast? Or are you from the West Coast? Okay, you're from the West Coast. Do you stay at Compton or Inglewood? Are you a Blood or you're a Crip? Are you this kind of Crip or that kind of Crip? At every level of humanity, we seem to find reasons to subdivide and reasons to dehumanize or not listen or disqualify one another. And it needs to stop. We need to transcend identity. Really, really needs to transcend identity. It gets in the way of clear thinking. And Glued Funky says, great to catch you live. I'm glad you're here. And I hope you got to watch more than a few minutes, because we're done. We're done. Ooh, got someone watching from London. Their name is YouTube Censors Our Free Speech. That is true. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. This is a fun stream. I'll be back on Wednesday. I also have some cool stuff that I'm going to announce really soon. So in order to be sure that you don't miss it, I highly, highly recommend that you sign up for my mailing list. It's thatskaizen.substack.com. This week, I have a post coming out about Sydney Sweeney, because that is still going on. And I think there's actually a lot of interesting social dynamics that are worth talking about around race and around genes and like people's discomfort with talking about the idea of some people having more capable genes and some people having less capable genes. And I think it's okay that that's how evolution works. So yeah, some thoughts on that. And yeah, I have a thing that I announced, and it's going to be announced there. So really recommend you get on the list. It's thatskaizen.substack.com, which I'm going to post in the chat right now. Boom. There you go. Go click it right now. And don't be intimidated if you see it asking for you for money. Don't have to give me money. It's free to sign up. But of course, if you want to support me as a paying subscriber, that does help because I do this stuff and it's not free. And you know what, guys, want to know something? I've lost 70 subscribers since I started being more critical of Trump. That's like $700 a month. It's not going to make or break me, but it's not nice. So look, ultimately, my belief is that if I'm true to myself and I'm honest, in the long term, everything works out. But yeah, you know, it's hard out here because, you know, people, they like you when you're saying things that they agree with, and they don't like you when you're not saying it. And, you know, sometimes you lose money because of it. So yeah, any support is helpful. And I appreciate you for sticking with me on the journey. I will see you on Wednesday for another episode of Nuanced. Peace.